Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special evening with Business Standard. Today, as we celebrate the Platinum Jubilee of India's independence, it is also a time to acknowledge and celebrate the contributions of India Inc., which rolled up its sleeves and got down to building the nation. In the last 75 years, entrepreneurs have helped India through its transition from an agrarian economy to now a tech-driven era where over 100 unicorns have taken center stage, fueled by unbridled innovation, enthusiasm, and of course, gumption. This evening is about all of that. It's about acknowledging how far we have come. It's also about taking stock of where we are today, and it's about looking into the future to see where we intend to head from here. With that brief introduction, I would like to invite Business Standard Editor, Mr. Shailesh Dobhal, to deliver the welcome address. Shailesh.
Thank you, Vinu. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have the honor and pleasure to welcome Mr. Nitin Gadkari as a chief guest at this special Business Standard event to celebrate India at 75, past, present, and future. And Mr. Gadkari needs no introduction. He's the Minister of Road Transport and Highways in the Government of India. Mr. Gadkari has had a long and fruitful political social life. He has always believed that politics is an instrument of socio-economic change and that roads are a gateway to prosperity. To quote him, quote, "American roads are not good because America is rich, but America is rich because American roads are good," unquote. And Mr. Gadkari has lived by this motto. He provided an all-weather connectivity to far-flung Amravati villages, and that did wonders to incidents of malnutrition among tribals in the Melghat-Dharni belt. As PWD minister in the Maharashtra government back in 1995 to 1999, he envisioned and executed the country's first access control road in Mumbai-Pune highway. Mr. Gadkari was the first to believe and to prove to a skeptical India that funds can be raised from the market for infrastructure projects when he championed the formation of Maharashtra State Road Development Corporation. Under him, as Minister of Road Transport and Highways in the central government, National Highways length has increased from just under 90,000 kilometers in 2014 to currently about 141,000 as of March 31st, 2022. Vehicles on Indian roads have seen a similar jump from just 190 million in 2014 to almost 300 million as of 2019-20. The minister is also overseeing many marquee projects, including the ambitious rupees 7 lakh crore Bharatmala Phase 1 within his ministry. All lanes in free plazas across the national highways are now connected to electronic toll collection program through FASTags, and Mr. Gadkari has already moved ahead and promised of providing cardless highway access through satellite-based tolling systems. Many thanks, sir, for agreeing to be here with us, and look forward to your fireside chat with my colleague, Nivedita Mukherjee, Business Standard's Executive Editor. Nivedita, over to you, please.
Thank you, Shailesh. Mr. Gadkari, welcome to this very special fireside chat. And since we are celebrating India at 75, how would you describe the achievement? What are the three areas that stand out according to you in these 75 years?
Actually, from 47, at that time, before independence, as compared with international standards and other countries, our backwardness was really notable, in particular in the field of infrastructure, agriculture, industry. But basically now, India is progressing. I feel that in any country, first of all, we need economic approach of the government is very important. In 47, there was socialism, then capitalism and communism. I remember in the old days, because my date of birth is in 1957. But before that, some of the party polarized, some of the communist party, some socialist party, and then Swatantra party was at that time. They have some liberal economic thinking. But today, in the situation now, this is the time for the country, and which is our economic policy, as far as the under leadership of Prime Minister Modi ji, that first of all, eradication of poverty is the main vision. And for eradication of poverty, we need to create more employment potential. And without capital investment, without industry, we cannot create employment potential. And if you want to create industry and capital investment, we need water, power, transport, and communication. Without that, it cannot be possible. We need to increase our export. We need to reduce our import. At the same time, in our GDP growth, 22 to 24% coming from manufacturing sector, then 52 to 54% from service sector, and 12% from the agriculture sector. The basic problem in our economy from 47 to up till now, where our government is trying to change that neglection, particularly the agro economy, rural economy, tribal economy, the forest related area, the tribal area is neglected. That is one of the problems. So now once upon a time, 80% of the population belongs to agriculture, rural India. And now it comes to 65%. This 25% migration is a big problem for the country. And this 65% population adding growth of 12%. And a manufacturing sector and service sector is from urban area. It contributes more than that. Somewhere there is an imbalance between the approach. And that is the reason that disparity is there. The 120 aspirant districts, socially, economically, educationally backward. So that is the reason that we have to find out the way out, that how we can make the development in particularly in the rural, agriculture and tribal area, and by which we can increase the growth rate, and 100% will be in position to make India as Atmanirbhar Bharat. And our government is trying to do that.
Right. So in these 75 years, what are the bright spots? Any three areas or sectors that you can name which have really done well?
One thing is important, that today we really Atmanirbhar as far as the food grain is concerned. Actually, once upon a time in my childhood, I remember there was a Milo from Russia, something. And Lal Bahadur Shastri ji appeal at that time that you only take one time lunch, or that was the situation in the country. But today, it's a good thing that we have sugar surplus, we have corn surplus, we have wheat surplus, we have rice surplus. And now only edible oil. There is a shortage. We are importing the edible oil of 1,50,000 crore. But now today already we are in process to how we can make our country Atmanirbhar, particularly edible oil is concerned. My thinking is, and the government thinking is, we need to understand what are our imports. So for example, we have import of 16 lakh crore of crude oil, fossil fuels. We have import of energy, particularly the coal sector. We have coal mines, but we are importing coal. That is more than 12 lakh crore. Sometimes it goes up to 16 lakh, 18 lakh crores. Then the important thing is, particularly in many sectors, where we have got the ability, but we are importing. We need to find out the option. And I am confident that we are fully capable, that in place of making import, we can start export. By changing our economic approach, it can be possible. Just I am giving the example of automobile sector. The present turnover of automobile sector is 7.5 crore. You remember at the first time when there was Maruti, and Maruti make joint venture with Suzuki, I remember there was hesitation against that decision. But because of Suzuki coming to India, it changed, qualitative change in automobile sector. And many times I am telling to my friends who are the owner of the automobile sector, you should be quality centric, not cost centric. And today also I meet with the people from Tata. Now their electric car, there is a waiting period of 1 year. He just was telling me that 38,000 car he already sent. So now this 7.5 lakh crore of automobile sector, as a transport minister, my dream is to take it up to 15 lakh crore. And this is the sector which is giving maximum revenue to state and central government. This is the sector which creates maximum employment potential in the country. And majority, 99% of the all reputed brand, they are present in India now. And now majority, the Hyundai, Toyota, Mercedes, BMW, all the companies, they are exporting their cars from India. One of the great achievement is our two-wheeler manufacturer. His industry is very big. Bajaj, Hero and TVS. They have already 50% of their production they are making export. So I feel that if we can make this industry of 15 lakh crore with new technology, with the ethanol, methanol, green hydrogen, then electric, so we will change the total scenario in the world. And because of the ancillary industry of automobile sector, will create a lot of employment. So exactly on that line, government is working. We are making hardware. Our import, we are expecting up to 24 end. Now we are in process of it, making a lot of alternative for that, but it will be 25 lakh crores. But now we have started. I just give the example. Just 2 months before, the Intel chairman was here, world chairman, Patrick. Myself, IT minister and Rajiv Chandrasekhar was there. We have a good meeting with them. I just convinced them that what is the potential for this semiconductor in the country. And when he take this all statistic from me, say, yeah, it's a huge potential. You start here because semiconductor is a big shortage. So even mobile phone, once upon a totally mobile phone, laptop, everything we are importing. Now we are in position we are making it. So 100% we are in position to accelerate the process of making India as Atmanirbhar Bharat. And 100% I am confident that we will achieve that goal.
So automobile surely is top of your list.
No, it's because of related with my ministry.
Yes. So
actually, it's a joke with me. I have more interest and I'm working in agriculture. I received 2 deletes from reputed university, one from Punjab Rao Agriculture University, Akola,
wow.
and Mahatma Jyotiba Phule Agriculture University from Rahuri, near the Shirdi. So, my interest is agriculture. But actually my responsibility as a road minister. So, the transport is under me, so that's the reason that automobile industry is with me. In the road sector, I always thinking that how we can encourage more employment potential, how we can make safe roads, how we can save fuel. And most important thing is ethics, economy, ecology and environment.
Right.
I am the person who is responsible for maximum pollution in India. So this is it's a very sensitive, I am constantly trying that how we can reduce air pollution in the country.
Right. So 75 years ago, there was no 4-lane highways. So, but we have made much progress. But don't you think we could have done much better in terms of quality, not just setting targets in terms of how much to construct?
Actually, it's an interesting thing. When I was minister in Maharashtra, I got opportunity to construct Mumbai-Pune Express Highway, Worli-Bandra Ceiling Project and 55 flyovers in Mumbai. At that time, fund was a big problem. So first time we have decided the people who can pay, we can take the money from them. And people who don't have the capability to pay, we can give them free of charge services. Now I am telling you an interesting thing. When I start constructing 55 flyovers in Mumbai with public-private investment, there is a lot of criticism on me that you are doing flyovers for urban area, for the big people in Mumbai, you are thinking about the car owners. But I am giving you the example. The inspiration and motivation behind my PPP mode, BOT project is, I save that budget. And at that time with my ministry, we connect 14,000 villages of Maharashtra with all season road. It is only because of we construct all flyovers in Mumbai by private-public investment. Mumbai-Pune Express Highway with public-private investment. And that is the reason that the inspiration behind public-private investment is giving total maximum budget to the poor people, those who are socially, economically, educationally backward. Yeah? Oh, yes, sir. नो प्रॉब्लम, मैं आफ्टर दैट ले लूँ.
नहीं आप पीजिए,
नहीं,
मैं
कोई-
सवाल कर लेती हूँ.
आप-
नेक्स्ट. So I would ask you, what's your vision for the next 2 years, 2 critical years, and what about the next 25 years for this sector, road and highways?
Actually, now we are already in the process of making 26 green express highway. Even end of this December, this year, we will connect Delhi to Dehradun 2 hours, Delhi to Haridwar 2 hours, Delhi to Jaipur 2 hours, Delhi to Amritsar 4 hours, Delhi to Katra 6 hours, Delhi to Srinagar 8 hours, then Delhi to Mumbai 12 hours. Already we have completed the project Meerut to Delhi. Previously it was 4.5 hours, now it is 40 minutes. When I was in Meerut, the people was telling me, we are going to take ice cream in Connaught Place from Meerut. And many of the people in Delhi, the residents of Meerut, they are again going back to the Meerut for, they don't have problem, they can come here. So we are connecting Chennai to Bangalore within 2 hours. Already works have started. Then we are making a very interesting road where it will reduce the pollution of Mumbai and Pune. All North India traffic from Rajasthan, Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, Himachal, Uttarakhand, all going to south, it going to Mumbai, and Mumbai-Pune Express Highway, then going to Pune, and one side towards Solapur and one side towards Kolhapur, going to Bangalore and Hyderabad. So now we have decided, we are already in the process of starting new road from Surat. So by Delhi-Mumbai highway, you can go up to the Surat, and after Surat, it will go to Nasik, Nasik to Ahmednagar, Ahmednagar to Solapur. So totally North India and South India connection will be fine. That will also probably 220 kilometers, saving of kilometers is there. So it can be also good. So we are making a lot of new roads, tunnels. We are making tunnels of 2 lakh crores now.
But what are the challenges on the way? Sometimes you fall behind target and, then it must be a frustrating experience.
No. I always tell it to the people that some people convert problems into opportunities and some people convert opportunities into the problems. So everywhere there are challenges. Our whole life is full of challenges, but your positivity, your commitment, your fast track decision making process, transparency, corruption-free system, and your commitment for society and the nation, it inspires you, it motivates you, and you can resolve the problem. I'm giving you an example, good example, because your magazine is from, actually it is business standard. So it's a really important example. When I was taken charge as a minister, we have stole project of 406 projects with the cost of 3,85,000 crore. We have terminated the project costing 40,000 crore, and we resolved the issue, and my ministry saved Indian banks from the NPA of 3 lakh crores. And lot of big company, I don't want to take the name of the companies, they are all on big problems. So we resolved the issue. My always suggestion to my officers and engineers that don't break the law. Bend the law up to the last limit of breaking point and positively try to resolve the issues. And I'm confident that we can find out the solution.
If in one line you have to say what is your vision for the next 25 years, 25 years later, road sector, how do you see it in India?
Actually, it's a big problem. In Indian expertise is regarding increase in population and increase in automobile number, the people are working very fast. Now, in some of the area, the 2 or 3 people in the family, but they have 6 cars, 7 cars, 8 cars. They don't have parking facility. It's unfortunately in Delhi, people are taking 2, 3, 4 cars, no parking facility. So it's a big problem. But now we are in position, now it's my dream, to make a public transport system on electricity. Now already we have sanctioned 165 ropeway, cable car, vernacular railway. Now my idea is, it's not my declaration, but we are working on that. From Dhola Kuwa to Manesar, we want to make sky bus. Now, some days before, I have a presentation from Doffelmayr, Austrian company. They have a 200 capacity bus in the sky. So we can take it because huge number of traffic is there. So public transport system on electricity is very important. It is to be import substitute, cost effective, pollution free and indigenous. We are working on that. Now I have again, it's in my mind, everywhere in the city there are 2 hills, 3 hills, 4 hills. I was in Pune 3 days before. So in the sky, if we connect one hill to another hill and making roads, then it can be possible. The most important problem in Indian economic situation is logistic cost. The logistic cost in India is sometimes 16 to 17%. China, it is 8 to 10%. European country, it is 12%. So my dream is to reduce the logistic cost. Without that, we cannot be competent in international market. For our export, we need to reduce the cost. Now the problem is when I was shipping minister, I got opportunity to work. We complete Varanasi to Haldia, 1,350 kilometers of waterway. Then we have completed waterway in Brahmaputra. Yesterday I had a dinner with Prime Minister of Bangladesh. I was just telling to her at the time, Sushma Swaraj request me to make the dredging for in Brahmaputra up to Mungli port in Bangladesh. So Sushma ji tell me, Nitin, is it possible for you? Can you do it? If you tell me, I can do it, and I do it. I connected that Mungli port, 250 kilometers of dredging in Brahmaputra we have completed at that time. So now Barak dredging is completed. And we are covered by the sea in a lot of area. So we can make water transport. It's really important. Water, I'm just telling you, if going by road, the cost is 10 rupees. Going by railways, cost is 6 rupees. And going by waterways, cost is 1 rupee. And by using methanol, which is coming from the coal, the Assam Petroleum is manufacturing. I am trying my level best to launch methanol engine. Methanol rate is 22 rupees per liter and diesel rate is 110 rupees per liter. So 100% the cost will be 50 paisa. So now the idea is we are making multimodal hub. We are making the logistic park of 2 lakh crore, 36 logistic parks we have already sanctioned. And there are 60, 70 are in the process. So multimodal logistic park where the waterways will be there, road will be there, airport will be there and the railway will be there. By making integration between the all transport, we can reduce the cost and we can develop the backward area of the country. That is exactly I am trying. We are making 650 roadside amenities near highway. Out of which 70 already works awarded. And in many places we have heliport. And the dream is taking drone from Delhi, material from to that place by drone also. We can take, if the accident is there, the lungs transplantation, heart transplantation, organ transplantation, we can take it and taking it to the hospital.
So you mentioned accidents. So accident is much in focus now, and you know, along with travel and logistics and everything, accidents have gone up exponentially. You said some time back that road accidents could be worse than COVID-19 pandemic, in fact. So why are Indian roads killers? Or is that a misinterpretation?
Actually, frankly speaking, this is the only field where from last 7 to 8 years I try my level best, but I could not get success. I am ready to accept it. Maybe my defeat, I can accept it. We have 5 lakhs accidents and 1,50,000 deaths. But this is not only because of road condition. There are 4 problems. Road engineering, automobile engineering. The other problem is, particularly we need to have facility of giving emergency health service to the accident people. We don't have. Third is education. There we need cooperation of people. The people are not serious and sensitive about it. I'm really unhappy about it. Now today I just coming before this program, I received a call from Akshay Kumar. He was in London. And he was telling me that, Nitinji, my 3 films, he is free of charge working for road safety. Now Amitabh Bachchan is also ready. He was telling me you immediately launch it because the atmosphere in the country is today, people want to understand about road safety and accident.
So are you planning to launch it?
Yes. In Bangalore we are going to launch 3 advertisements. So The third is in the particularly the educational institution, colleges, then social organization, the NGOs. We need their cooperation. And the fourth thing is implementation. कानून के प्रति डर भी नहीं और सम्मान भी नहीं है, इसकी विचित्र अवस्था है. Where we need your help, media help, celebrities, sports personalities, and where we can make the campaign that it is the behavior of the people is very important. And we need to change the mindset of the people. Well, it's not good for me, but I'm telling you the story. Already in media, I got from last 1 year, I got offered to visit 4 or 5 states, many states. And when I was sitting with the chief minister in his car, because of that, there was arrangement. The belt was backside, and there was some ऐसा क्लिप लगा दी अंदर, और वो आवाज बोलना बंद कर देती थी. तो मैंने ड्राइवर को, बेल्ट कहाँ है? बोले पीछे. बोले ऐसा कैसा नहीं, बंद करो गाड़ी, रुको, लगाओ उसको. मतलब मैं मंत्री हूँ, फाइन लगता है. तो this type of situation is in the country that people are not serious about it.
So how do you think the auto industry should focus more to make things safer, especially for small cars, you know, for aam aadmi, so to say?
Actually, first time in media I am giving you the information that because of this Cyrus accident, today just we have taken a decision that there will be that clip. तो सामने बेल्ट का आवाज आता है, लगाया नहीं तो पीछे वाले भी नहीं लगाएंगे तो भी वो चिल्लाते रहेंगे, आवाज आता रहेगा. तो पीछे और सामने दोनों को बेल्ट लगाना पड़ेगा. So we are now.
So it's going to be so one will be penalized if we don't do it in the car. How
there is a provision for driver and the driver near traffic. If you don't have belt, there is a fine. Now even the back people also, if they don't take belt, we will fine them.
Have you decided on the penalty?
Already, yes, I clear it.
How much is the penalty?
Within 3 days, we will issue the order.
How much is the penalty?
That is in the law. There are a lot of discretion. This is a subject in concurrent list. And there is a penalty from one amount to higher. It can be decided by the competent authority and the state government.
And will it be applicable for all cars, even for small cars, or only?
Yes, all cars.
So all cars will have to have.
Actually, we have already decided that airbags should be mandatory for economic models also. There was some hesitation from some manufacturers, but garib ko marne do ye thoda matlab hai. And that cost is not big. It is 900 to 1,000 rupees something is there. We have to save the life of the people. Can you imagine? In the road accident, maximum deaths, the average age is 18 to 34, 60% people are. Young talented engineers, doctors, young students. Even in COVID, even in war, even whatever the thing, 1,50,000 death, highest every year. And now it is loss of 3% of economy to the, as per the growth rate is concerned, 3% loss, GDP growth. So this is bad and very unfortunate.
Can we take a couple of questions from the audience? Questions related to infrastructure and roadways. Anybody has any question can raise hand related to infrastructure and roadways. Yes.
Sir, very good evening. It's audible?
Yes.
Sir, just can you throw some light on what is happening with Manthan, which is happening in Bangalore this Thursday and Friday? And unfortunately, there is a lot of now, Bangalore has been locked with the rains and other things. So I think that will be meaningful, whatever happening in Bangalore only, that Manthan under your ministry. Thank you, sir.
Actually, because of rains, we are also very much serious about it now because there are heavy rains out there. But still the government, state government has assuring us that we have a program place where there will be no problem. But still it is a tension with everybody that how to go to Bangalore and how to be a successful program. With already Bangalore is and Karnataka is facing the problem because of heavy rains. The Manthan is a basic concept is come together, think together and work together. In my ministry, the transport and road construction. So the idea is upgradation of technology in road construction, new equipment, new technology. Regarding we need to improve the quality of construction and reduce the cost of construction. Then how we can make it fast? There are some problem with the state government in land acquisition, utility shifting, then forest environment clearance, where we need their cooperation. So there are a lot of coordination, communication and cooperation is very important. For that there are a lot of small meetings. Regarding implementation of law, road safety, we need to have discussed. 2-3 ideas are there regarding speed limits. Also now we are making good roads. We have to change the law. So we are now thinking that we all transport minister and secretary will formulate the policy. If the road is 2-lane paved shoulder, what will be the speed, maximum speed? If it is 4-lane, if it is 6-lane, if it is 12-lane access control express highway. So we will take unanimity on the decisions. Then regarding horn, sound pollution, air pollution and water pollution. My idea is to, in place of that sound pollution, the horn, we can use the sound of Indian instruments and mouth organ and other thing. That will reduce the sound pollution. We have a highest priority for plantation. Just 15 days before we have a meeting with the Environment and Forest Minister. And we have given them an idea that is of tree bank. So everywhere the ports, the NHI, NHIDCL, the railway, they just like a bank account, they can make the plantation of a tree. For this year, we have purchased tree of 80 lakh tree, cost 75 rupees per tree from Rajamundry, and total trees they are not available now. 3-meter height tree we have purchased. We make e-tag. On the basis of that, we will tell them if the one tree, if the cutting is there, we will plant 10 more trees. And if we make transplantation, we will make new 5 trees we can plant for that. And there will be e-tag. So that just like a bank account will be there. So on the basis of that, regarding ecology and environment, we are very cautious and sensitive. Regarding fuel, that is my favorite subject. And that is, I always feel that our farmers will be not only Annadata, they will be Urjadata. So we are started ethanol now. Now we want to make at 28 or 29, in my house we are going to launch a Toyota car, that Camry, and that is on 100% bioethanol. And there will be 40% on electricity, and by which for comparison, in comparison with the petrol car, the cost of the petrol will be 25 rupees per liter. So it is pollution free, it's a green fuel. Then we want to, about electric, green hydrogen. I also, my car in green hydrogen we have. So we want to develop it by which we can reduce not only pollution, but we will create more employment potential in the country. So these are the all concerning subjects. Road accident is also subject, one of the important.
Any other question? AKB.
I have one question, Mr. Minister. Do you think there is lack of adequate attention to need for public transport in our country compared to private transport? And what needs to be done in the next 25 years to encourage greater use of public transport compared to private transport?
Actually, what you are telling it is absolutely correct. Actually, you take the example of London transport. It's a very interesting thing. You should write one story on it. There are 9 operators. Now I am giving the example. The best is running their bus, diesel bus. The cost is 115 rupees per kilometer. And the electric bus tender, just we have received. For AC bus, 41 rupees per kilometer. And non-AC bus, it is 39 rupees per kilometer. The investment from the operator. And there will be only guarantee for 225 to 250 kilometers per day. And the conductor will belong to corporation and the driver will belong to operator. With the same dress, uniform, nothing will be there. So without capital investment, you can go for that. Now government, heavy power ministry has already decided. We are also part of that. We have purchased 5,000 electric buses. And the future plan is we will take 50,000 electric buses. From Delhi to Chandigarh, Delhi to Jaipur, Delhi to Simla, Delhi to Lucknow, now it's possible. So this can reduce the cost. And the air-conditioned buses, still you can reduce the ticket rate by 30%. All state transport are big losses. And I feel that it's really, you are absolutely correct, that we need to encourage public transport. Now my idea is to start trolley bus, because the electric bus cost is 1 crore 25 lakhs. And the trolley bus having capacity of 88 to 90 people, that is cost is only 50 to 60 lakhs. So my idea is to take cable from Sona to Jaipur and start double decker. The bus will be there on electric, and there will be air conditioned bus with seat like business class, and ticket rate will be less than present, whatever the ticket rate is, at 20% less. People will happy. So even in Nagpur, we have first time started new project. We are going to sign agreement between railway and Nagpur Metro. That my dream project is, we are making metro on broad gauge. From Nagpur to Amravati, Nagpur to Chhindwara, Nagpur to Baitul, Nagpur to Gondia, Nagpur to Chandrapur, Nagpur to Vadsa, and by which this is 900 kilometer area. And the speed of the broad gauge metro will be 140 kilometer per hour. So this is really a remarkable change, because presently from Nagpur to Amravati it takes 2.5 hours, and our metro will go with 1 hour and 30 minutes. And the cost of this metro is, what the Delhi we are making metro, the cost is 350 crore rupees per kilometer. And whatever the metro which I am going to start, which my dream project, the cost is 2 crore rupees per kilometer. And we are now encouraging private operators. One will be Prakash Travel, Prasanna Travel. He will purchase the metro. The cost of the metro is 30 crore with 8 rolling stocks already there, out of which 5 will be economic class, air conditioned metro. 1 will be business class, and 2 will be for milk and fruits, vegetable. 2 will be, that can be important because people will get the advantage of this. And now we are going to start that.
One more
this
question.
Can be a good thing.
One more question from the audience, Dhruvaksh.
One thing also I will tell you, in Mumbai, I have just launched 200 double-decker electric buses in the best. So this is the time that we can make double-decker luxury buses on electricity, and it can go up to Delhi to Jaipur, just like taking whole comforts. And the ticket rate will be less than compared with the railway and the state transport.
Dhruvaksh.
Sir, you've been a long time advocate of shifting transport systems, logistic systems from road to waterways, as you already said. But recent events in the last few months that we've seen, climate change induced drying up of rivers in Europe and America, climate change induced floods in Pakistan and parts of India. So do you see this as a warning sign for transport systems in India? Do our transport systems and logistic systems need to become more climate change resilient, because these things will keep happening now?
Like, frankly speaking, it's 100% absolutely correct that we need to reduce air pollution, water pollution and sound pollution in the country. As per our health issues are concerned, this is a problem. But what my suggestion, to create value in the West. Now popularly Parali, rice straw. Now we have taken initiative from last minute. I'm from 2004, I'm working on all this concept. Indian Oil has opened an industry in Panipat, making 1 lakh liter of bioethanol from rice straw, that is Parali, and 150 ton of bitumen per day, bio-bitumen from rice straw. The Parali is, because of burning of Parali, Delhi is facing the problem of pollution. So now we are going to create value in Parali. Even that we can make bio-CNG and bio-LNG from that. So these are the things where lot of things, West to, I always believe in talking about 2 philosophies. One is innovation, entrepreneurship, science, technology, research, skill and successful practices. We name it as knowledge, and conversion of knowledge into wealth is the future. That is very important for Atmanirbhar Bharat. And the other philosophy is no one is West. No person is West. It is depending upon the appropriate technology and appropriate vision that you can convert waste into wealth. Even from organic waste, you can make green hydrogen. You can get methane and bifurcate methane from CO2, you will get bio-CNG. Even in my own city, in my constituency in Nagpur, we have selling our sewage water to government of Maharashtra for power generation. Can you imagine? We are getting 300 crore rupees per year from selling of sewage water. Sir, I will request you one thing. You should once make a story on a successful project in Mathura. When I was water resource minister, in hybrid annuity, we have taken this project. 40% is given by the government and 60% from the investor. The investor is Triveni Engineering Company. And we have taken 80 mld of sludge of Mathura and making recycling of it. And the water we are getting it given to Indian Oil, to Mathura refinery. And they are giving 20 crore rupees per year as a royalty. So we save the money and we can resolve the issue. So everywhere in the West, if we segregate the waste, some of the material you can make recycling of it. So everywhere climate change is a problem, but we need to resolve all these small issues everywhere. The other important thing is, when I was water resource minister, we have 48 projects of river connectivity. We have already have planned for that. Out of which 18 reports, DPR has already finalized. And at the time when I was minister, there was from 1970, there was 23 disputes between the states. So actually at that time I resolved 17 issues. मैं दरवाजा बंद करता था, मुख्यमंत्री बैठ जाते थे और मैं बोलता था जब तक तुम झगड़ा नहीं मिटाओगे दरवाजा नहीं खुलेगा. तो मैंने पंजाब हरियाणा सब सॉल्व कर दिए. प्रॉब्लम इज आज की टर्मिनोलॉजी में आप ये रिवर कनेक्टिविटी को आप फ्लड प्रोटेक्शन प्रोजेक्ट कहो. हमारा माइंड सेट अब ऐसा बिगड़ा है कि लोग इकोलॉजी एंड एनवायरनमेंट के बात को लेकर एकदम इतना एक्सेंट्रिक बोलते हैं. अभी एक सिंपल थिंग है, नदियों में ड्रेजिंग करो और दोनों बाजू में जो पत्थर निकलेंगे वो लगा दो और पानी गांव में नहीं घुसना चाहिए तो फ्लड नहीं होगा. फ्लड नहीं होगा तो नुकसान नहीं होगा. अभी आई एम गिविंग ए सिंपल एग्जांपल. 1 month before, ex deputy prime minister of Nepal was with me. There is a big project named as Pancheshwar, and there is no Pancheshwar. That is the reason we are facing flood problem in UP and Bihar. So the cost of the project is 60,000 crore. There are a lot of discussions. I am telling unofficially because I am not the minister, but I am giving you the solution. So don't take it as a official decision of the government. It is to be pending between Nepal and Bharat. I tell them that this project has generated 6,000 megawatt power. So you take 2,500 megawatt power, we will make the all capital cost for it. And Nepal requirement is 3,000 megawatt of power. You will get the power free of charge. We will resolve every year we are losing 40 to 50,000 crore in flood problem in UP and Bihar. That problem will be solved and we will get the power. So there are a lot of things. Water is not a problem. We need a good management, good system for water. We can take water from one basin to another basin. One of the area there is a water scarcity is there and some of the area where floods are there. So it can be possible. So we can make it and it can be possible and it can protect the ecology and environment and it can also giving a new life to the rural agriculture and tribal India.
I'll ask the last question perhaps. You inaugurated a drone prototype for transporting organs recently, and there's been talk about flying buses to solve Pune transport problems. So what next?
We are working on that process. It will be, actually when I tell you something, immediately people will take it as news and again they has promised and declared. It is in the process now. It can be possible. संभव है, असंभव नहीं है. We are working on that. We have already sanctioned 165 ropeway cable car project. We are planning for mass rapid transport system. We are talking with a lot of big company in the world about the new technology. And I always feel that what your question is absolutely correct. That is the need of India, that we need comfortable, qualitative, mass rapid transport, public transport. Everyone is using car, it creates problem. So on the basis of that, giving good comforts, it can be possible and now it should be the highest priority for the government, air conditioned electric buses. We can reduce the cost, ticket cost by 30% because electric is very cheaper. So a lot of things where by using technology, we can resolve the issue. And the three important pillars of Indian society: ethics, economy, ecology, and environment. We need to develop our economy. At the same time, we have to protect our ecology and environment. And already the value-based education system, families, all this thing, education, is the basic thing and the most important strength for India. We can even have a capital, we can be Vishwa Guru and Atmanirbhar Bharat, and we can make Indian economy as #1 economy in the world. It can be possible, and our all government under leadership of Modi ji, we are trying towards that aim. It's a difficult thing, but it's not asambhav. It can possible.
Thank you, Mr. Gadkari.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure and delight, and I'm honored.
Thank
you so much.
Hi, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Gadkari, for that candid and freewheeling conversation. And thank you, Nivedita, for taking us through it. I would once again request Shailesh to please come and say a few words.
Many thanks, sir, for your enlightening, forthright views on not just infrastructure, but your whole philosophy of turning challenges into opportunities. You know? The way you spoke about public transport focus, multimodal parks, how your department, found an opportunity not to execute projects which were not executable, and saved banks almost 3 trillion in NPAs, sure NPAs. How on road safety, which is currently the hot topic, you lay down a full system of how construction compliance and communication need to work together. The interplay between rural, urban, and migrant dynamics that you spoke about. You also laid down your targets for the road sector from 7.5 trillion to 15 trillion. There's so many of them in the logistics cost, bringing it down to single digits, if not early double digits. We're very grateful you could spare time from a very busy schedule to be here with us and address this audience and thousands of other people who are watching this program live on Business Standard website. May I invite Business Standard's Editorial Director, Mr. Bhattacharya, again, to please present a small memento as a token of our appreciation to the Minister. Please, Mr. Bhattacharya. And Mr. Minister, we have taken all your suggestions on board, and you'll soon find them reflected in. Yes.
हम लोग अभी कैपिटल मार्केट जा रहे हैं। अब जैसे बीओटी हाइब्रिड एन्युटी प्रोजेक्ट्स है, तो अभी हम लोग 10 लाख रुपए तक जो हमारा प्रोजेक्ट होगा उसका शेयर आप ले सकते हैं। और वी विल अश्योर यू टू गिव यू 8% रिटर्न। वो आपको बैंक में रिटायर होने के बाद पैसा 4.5% मिलेगा।
But this is sovereign guarantee, Mr.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. NHI is AAA rating.
Okay.
NHI is AAA rating. No problem, no risk, and I will give you your interest in every month, but you give the retire every month to everybody. And I am telling you, I don't have money problem. There are a lot of pension fund, insurance fund, foreign fund. They are waiting for they are ready to give me the fund. But I am decided that now I will make the roads from the retired senior citizens' money, making roads from the small people like constable, journalists, service people. They can invest in NHI, and I will give them 7 to 8% returns per month. It will be assured return. My total income is 40,000 crore presently, and up to end of 24, it will be 1,40,000 crore. So it's 100% sure. So invest in it and take it. And I want to take this money from small people, and that is my dream, to give the benefit to the poor people, the middle class people, lower middle class people for that. And the second thing is,
we are making projects of 60,000 crores to the Delhi. The projects are in the process. And we have already prepared the plan giving to LG, that taking all wholesale markets, godowns, container depot to the ring road, peripheral road, which is constructed by my ministry. And 8 places are there where railway is there. On the basis there will be container depot. And we will take all wholesale market of Delhi to that area. And we want to resolve the air pollution problem in Delhi. That is also a big problem.
Yes, absolutely. So banks will soon have competition from the road ministry, for retail deposits.
They are not happy about this decision, because they are telling me that you will, the deposits will be diversified from bank to NHI.
Okay. I have a request, Mr. Gadkari, if you could just stay with us for some time, if your time allows. And thanks so much again, sir. Thank you so much.
ओके ये लगाए
Business Standard. She'll soon be quoted on the front page. Business.
Request everyone to please stay seated. We'll be starting the panel discussion now. Should we? Yeah? All right. It's now for time for the panel discussion on the topic India at 75, Past, Present and Future. I would like to invite our eminent panelists on stage. We have with us Ms. Yamini Iyer, President and Chief Executive of the Center for Policy Research. Mr. Akhil Gupta, Vice Chairman of Bharti Enterprises. Mr. Andrew Holland, CEO of Avendus Capital Alternate Strategies. And Mr. Shekhar Shah, Vice Chairman, ISPP Academic Advisory Council. In a conversation with them will be Business Standard Editorial Director, Mr. A.K. Bhattacharya. The stage is all yours.
Thank you. Will you please switch it on?
I think it's on.
Okay. Good. Very good evening to you all. I thought we had a wonderful session with the minister, and he was so candid, and actually he sort of laid out a plan for the next 25 years, the so-called Amrit Kal. So this session probably will take about 45 minutes or so. What we intend to do is have a discussion on the past, the present, and the future. I know it's a very ambitious task, but we will try to do that with such an eminent panel here. And we have got this panel with some thought in our mind, which is we have for the economy section, we have Mr. Shah. For the markets, we have got Mr. Holland. And for the corporates, we have got Gupta. And Ms. Iyer would tell us about the political economy. So for ease, what I would propose is that we try to segment this 75 years and beyond in three broad categories. One would be, let's say, 1947, the minister talked about 1947 to 1990, which is roughly 50 years after independence. Not really 1990, it's 97, but let's, for ease of analysis, let's keep it at 1990. And the next 30 years, which is still a current phase, and then we look at ahead, what the Prime Minister calls the Amrit Kal, so 25 years. So I would sort of first get a sense from each one of my panelists on how do they see that first 50 years till the reforms began in 1991. And then we will come to the next round, which is what really happened in the last 30, 31 years. And then we will have the final round of discussion would be on what does it look like going from now. So since Yamini is next to me, let me start with you, and this will also set the agenda. So on the political economy front, how do you see things briefly, what really happened in the first 50 years till 1990? Okay, let me not say 50 years, I say till 1990. How would you look at that? Sum it up for us. What was the past like?
I think perhaps the greatest achievement that India holds on to strongly even till today is that we embedded the idea of a democracy in a country which was widely seen with some degree of skepticism by the rest of the world. when we adopted the democratic path that we chose to within our constitution. The expectation that a country with deep inequalities, deeply entrenched forms of social discrimination would actually be able to survive, not just survive, thrive as a democracy, is one that most believed impossible. And I think we still, even today, despite all its warts, defy the imagination of the possibility of democracy being so deeply embedded. The challenge, and in some ways, democracy became increasingly competitive. The first 20 years, we saw Congress party, single party dominance. We moved into a more competitive political structure after 1967. That multi-party competitive system, particularly with new pulls and pressures from the states, the subnational regional parties, continue to play a really important role. And I think particularly leading up to the 1990s, since we're stopping there for the moment, the deepening of democracy as a space that provided access to state power, particularly in North India, of historically discriminated communities, the emergence of the OBC, the lower caste, the Dalit mobilization into the political landscape that sort of in some ways catapulted B.R. Ambedkar into the most prominent figure that is in shaping continuously, even today when all other historical figures are up for dispute, there's one that simply isn't. There's a reason for that. And I think that reason it comes in the form of the greatest gift that democracy has given us. However, the big challenge has been that while democracy was...
You mean the challenge till 1990?
The challenge till 1990 is that even in this phase, as democracy deepened its roots, it deepened its roots much more in the form of electoral competition. To some degree began to open up spaces for more substantive capture of state power by historically discriminated communities. But it did not translate into substantive democracy, by which I mean particularly a democracy that was able to deliver on socioeconomic rights of all citizens. So we've always had this tension in our democracy between individual rights, group rights, and the underlying sort of challenge of communalism that was in the shadow of our emergence in 1947 too, which and other forms of deep discrimination which continue to play today. And one of the consequences of that is that we weakened the state at the grassroots. And when we talk about post-1990, I think we'll come to this challenge, because today the real critical issue is why has democracy not delivered on critical public rights, critical rights and public services to all citizens.
Wonderful. Thank you. I mean, just to sort of get it right, what you are saying is this, that the emasculation of the states began even before 1990.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. That's an interesting point. I think this is exactly the setting where I would like to bring Shekhar in on the state of the Indian economy in the first 50 years ending at 1990 for my own thing.
Thank you, Ashok, and thank you to Business Standard for having me here. In a sense, Yamini has already set the stage for what the economy was doing in terms of whether it was able to provide the kinds of public services, whether provided by the private sector or by the state to its citizens. But just going to the very start of our democracy, there were a lot of predictions about how we would fall apart, how there was not going to be this kind of deep commitment to constitutional rights. But as we saw, that was the foundation to the republic and to social and economic progress. We adopted a Soviet-style economic framework, believing in the power of the state to know what is best for its citizens through our various 5-year plans. We tried to make sure that we were able to allocate resources to the kinds of industries and to the kinds of products that were believed to be important. We also had very major ideas, which turned out, of course, to be overly optimistic, of how we would be able to deliver on education, on literacy, on employment and jobs, on gender as well. But those clearly were perhaps far-fetched. On the hardcore economic progress, as we know, the means to the ends were probably not the right ones. We did not take advantage of the private sector that already existed in India at that time. There was this sense that, and we gradually went into the license Raj. Annual economic growth.
Well, we nationalized, no?
We nationalized as well. And annual economic growth during these 45 years, I believe, came to something like 3.5%. And per capita income averaged less than 1.3 or 1.4% over this 4 decades. So that in itself, with a rising population, with the ability to want to meet the expectations of this rising population, led to a lot of discontent. So overall, this was obviously a period when we could have done a lot better. When you look at other countries in mid-1940s, whether they're in East Asia or in Latin America, clearly India was in many instances ahead of these countries. And then looking at their performance over the next 20, 25, 30, 40 years, India clearly fell behind in a major way. Nonetheless, what we are enjoying today, and I guess this is getting into the second part of your question, the kind of technological assets that we've created in our human capital so that we are the leading lights in the digital world now in terms of human talent, being able to service industries, being able to create new industries. Those things also strangely have a root in our insistence on high quality technical education. You know, when my parents were talking to me about what would you like to do, son, in their minds they thought I was either going to be an engineer or a doctor.
Yeah.
And that was the way in which a lot of people thought. And we were not sure of the dividends that that policy was going to pay us. But today we are reaping the tremendous leadership that India enjoys in these areas. So there was some good to that as well. But at the same time, primary education suffered and health suffered, and a range of other things that could have been dealt with, which those other countries that are comparators actually dealt with right there and then.
So what I understood from you, Shekhar, is that we became a little of a statist society.
I would say a lot of a statist society.
Yeah, but at the same time, because of democracy perhaps, there were also moments when some of our leaders tried to break free from those shackles. Lal Bahadur Shastri,
yes.
Even Mrs. Gandhi in a second phase, and Rajiv Gandhi also did try until Bofors undid him.
Yes.
So would you agree with that? That
yes.
There were attempts, but I think we are not in...
I think there was already a realization that planning and central planning was not giving the dividends that were expected. There was a clear recognition that the states had to play a much more important role in a federal entity. So all of those things were driving our leadership to begin to think about alternatives.
Fantastic. I wanted to come to Andrew on the markets, but I think I will first go to Akhil on corporates. How do you see, looking back, the Indian corporate sector, the corporate scene was like till 1990, you know. My abiding memory of India Inc. Was that they were always afraid of competition. But if you want to correct that impression from 1947 to 1990, what really happened with India Inc.? They were of course constrained, but please have your say.
Well, very clearly the corporate sector was in a mess because our country did move towards socialism, and there were reasons. We were very poor. During that period, we had 3 wars. Can you imagine in that state of economy at 62, at 65, at 71? So one can today argue that we should have gone into the arms of US at that time. We made a wrong turn, went to USSR, but that's history. The fact is there were compulsions. some very bad economic decisions like nationalization of banks. Obviously, from a corporate sector point of view, nothing could have been worse. When we should have been.
Yamini would not agree, I'm sure. Please go ahead.
Of course, that's the beauty of a panel.
Go ahead.
But the fact is, when we should have been thinking of more and more private sector participation and privatizing the public sector, I think we went in a reverse direction at that time. So 1990 up to that point, definitely the all economic policies and the fiscal policies were such, taxation policies were such, that it was not very conducive for the corporate sector. But one thing which I think we all forget and which I do feel we must remember is this was the period when our institutions in the country were really made strong. I mean, let's not forget, we remember emergency, but we should also remember that it's the same country which overthrew Mrs. Gandhi after emergency, and there was a very smooth transition of power. It wasn't that somebody just came and occupied the seat. So that transition from a state where Congress was the single party to a multi-party system, opposition coming into power, I think those were good things which happened. But from a corporate sector point of view, I think some foundations were being laid. Maruti had started, that was a big step towards private sector coming in. Of course, there were big industrial houses, but you could see that by end of 90, there were seeds being sown for the corporate sector.
So
In 1990, that decade was a golden period for private sector, especially the sector I come from, telecom.
I mean, essentially what you're saying is that that was also the phase when institutions were built, IITs, IIMs, and the temples of modern India.
Not only that, but the basic democratic institutions, separation of judiciary and executive, and so on. I think you can't undermine the importance of those.
You know, the remarkable thing with Yamini, Shekhar, and Akhil, you have said, 3 different areas that you spoke on, but there was one common factor, which is democracy. And those democratic institutions, that democratic spirit, and that probably has defined so far. We are yet to hear Andrew on the markets. Please go ahead on your understanding of the markets in those years from 1947 to 1990.
I'm an historian of the markets for 47 to 90. I think from where I was sitting in the UK at that time, India was just wasn't on the radar in terms of a market. And I think the reason for that was a fewfold. One is, and I'll go across years as well, but I think following 47, I think India seemed to be kind of more inward-looking, and wasn't letting the world in. And I think if I just kind of think about that in terms of India is one of the few countries, maybe the only country, I can be wrong, that moved from agriculture to services and missed out manufacturing altogether. And that's a big miss. Now I'm not saying it's all to do with inward-looking policies or anything like that, but if you think about it, it took India, was it till 2006, 7, 60 years to have a $1 trillion economy. The next $1 trillion came 7 years later, and the next trillion came 7 years after that. That's the, and we'll talk about the potential, but I suppose that's where India was up until 90, was that it wasn't, from a market viewpoint anyway, one, it wasn't open. If you remember those in the markets then, you had those jumbo certificates, you had transfers and certificates. So there's a lot of things that foreign investors would not want to come to India at that point. So that's where I think we are.
Absolutely. I think the markets almost virtually, except BSE Sensex had just come in 1987 or so, and Nifty was not there. So the markets were just not there. There was no regulator. It came in only in 1987. So you're absolutely right that the markets did not really make much of a difference to to society as such. They did, I think, the post-90. So let me start with you on that phase. The second phase, which is from 1990 to now, how have markets fared and performed, in your view?
I mean, it's obviously had its usual times when it's been volatile and mainly to do with global meltdowns rather than, I mean, there has been, don't get me wrong, there has been some of these scams over the years as well. You know, fortunately, they're becoming less and less as the regulators, you know, put more stricter rules on how to kind of buy and sell shares. So I think that's a good news for the markets as well. We're moving away from those sorts of problems. But you know, from a market perspective, the way I think about it is, if you look over the history of the market since that time, usually, you know, the market cap to GDP is going to be around that 70 to 100%, sometimes over. So, you know, if we're saying that the economy is going to be a $5 trillion economy in the next 3 years, and if I think earnings are going to continue to grow the way they've been growing, then I can quite easily think about how large the market cap of India will be in 3 to 4 years' time. Now, obviously, they're going to work out which sectors would be performing and doing well in that time. But that's, you know, a kind of an easy kind of rule of thumb in terms of gauging where you think the markets are going to go over a longer period, is to gauge it to the GDP of the country, and therefore. So I think everything that I've seen, so again, from the first days when I came to India, which was 25 years ago, from, you know, the transfer certificate to DMAT, to the regulator, you know, putting more rules and regulations there, and the fact that, when, again, I'm just thinking back to 97 when we did it was at Merrill Lynch, we did our first conference, you know, for foreign investors. I think about 10 turned up, and, you know, the last one I did, I think in 2006, 250 turned up, and I'm sure, you know, there's more and more people, foreign investors. So India's on the map of everybody. In terms of a market from when I first came in 97, and that's the good news, and it can only kind of increase from here, is my belief.
One question which often comes up in many discussions, that the Indian stock markets have seen too many scams in this period. How would you look at the frequency or incidence of scams? You know, Harshad Mehta, Ketan Parekh, UTI. Is it normal on a time span of maybe 30 years? Is it okay, or what do you think really went wrong, or what could have gone right?
You know, we always kind of, gets to me is that, you know, everyone looks into India and says, oh, you've had this scam, you've had this, and they're forgetting other countries that they've had exactly the same things as well. I mean, it's not just India alone that has these. If I look now in terms of the headlines around the world, in the last 2 years, there's been this scam around of fixing the price of was it gold or silver or something? They were fixing interest rates.
LIBOR. Yeah.
LIBOR. I mean, that's huge. I mean, that's a global scam. It's not just a India stock market. So I said, I think SEBI and the regulators, NSE, BSE, have all kind of moved very sharply to kind of cut this down, and it's becoming less. Listen, there'll still be problems, as we see in other markets as well, but I think we're a bit harsh on ourselves, to be honest, compared to, you know, what I see still going on in other countries.
No, Akhil talked about institutions. Do you think in the case of the markets in those 30 years, institutional integrity was something that could have been of a certain order, which it was not there?
I think all
or
of these
institutional
things,
independence and integrity as well?
I think these things, you know, kind of evolve over time. I don't think you set down rules of everyone If I'll give you an example in the UK. There was, well, let's give you two examples. Let's talk about the example of investment banking people knowing deals are coming through and buying the shares. That was rife throughout the UK in the 80s, right? Now, they were part of big institutions. They weren't small companies. They were big banks that they were part of. So that happened. If you take the kind of, before the dot-com fall, analysts were writing research knowing full well that the companies they were writing about were terrible, were bad. But they did it because the bank was getting a fee income and they got paid bonuses by writing positive research. So, it evolves and regulations tighten around it each time. And I think that's what's been happening in India. And it will be a continued process.
Okay. I'll come to you, Akhil, on 30 years post-1990, India Inc.
Well,
how do you see that?
The reforms that took place in 1992, I think, changed the corporate sector for this country forever. And I'll talk specifically for the sector I come from, because that was the golden period, the 1990s. 1994, the licenses were given for the mobile services, and rest has been history. We came from an era when typically when a child was born, you applied for a phone in the hope that when he becomes an adult, he might get one particular phone. And from that to a state where in 30 minutes, you, with all the KYC and everything, you can, and today, of course, it's available in every nook and corner of the country. But 1990 was, I would say, a turning decade for the corporate sector, not just for telecom, many other industries. And India, I think, started gaining confidence. Financial sector came up. Like Andrew said, SEBI started, looking at things from a global perspective. I still remember our first IPO for Bharti Airtel was in 2002. And the state of the economy, you can imagine, we raised 653 crores for a 10% stake. That was the highest ever IPO in India till then. So the scales have changed, but that particular IPO or IPOs of that nature put India onto a path where private sector was welcome, private sector started getting celebrated, and of course, after that you've seen some really rapid progress.
What would you say about the change in the composition of India Inc.? In a sense, a lot of people have pointed out that how the traditional business houses were left way behind, and a new class of entrepreneurs. I mean, in your case, yours is a company that was not launched by any traditional business house, and there are many other cases. So, was it a story of only reform, or was it a story also of, let me go back to my favorite theme, democracy,
Well, intertwined, because with those reforms, normal entrepreneurs started getting a chance of coming onto the central stage. And the fact in corporate world is, if you don't change quickly enough, somebody will overtake you. That is the rule for everybody. Whether you are a very big industrial house or you are somebody who has come up in the last 15 years, if you are not keeping pace, you will be overtaken. And I think that is a great sign of success of India Inc. That some of the orders which were written in terms of rankings completely got changed in these 30 years.
Give me one reason why those traditional business houses, many of them just completely disappeared in these last 30 years.
Well, as I said, did not keep pace with the times, which includes mismanagement, which includes malfeasance at times. So the time required corporate governance, they required transparency. But if somebody was very used to the idea of license Raj. Obviously, with the opening up of the economy, they took the toll.
Mismanagement would include mismanagement of the government also? No.
Management of the government, you mean?
Yeah, I meant that. When you mismanage the government, you are in trouble at times.
Yeah, I think those times changed.
Times changed.
And people got a chance where, without worrying too much about, pleasing the government, you could not only survive but thrive.
That changed, okay. Shekhar, 30 years, 1990. Lot of things happened in the Indian economy. It changed completely.
Well, it's probably changed more than we perhaps even understood when we started off the process in the early 90s. It was a crisis that drove us into that. But when you look back and you think about high growth as sort of the leitmotif of this period, as I think T.N. Nainan has pointed out, there were actually only two incidences, 5-year incidences of high growth. One was, of course, in the 2003 to 2007 period, when the entire global economy was really gangbusters, and our exports did dramatically well during that period. The second, of course, happened because of the oil price bonanza that we got in the 14-19 period. So these were two very high growth episodes that India experienced. And I think we learned a lot about the ability of India to compete under the right conditions, as well as perhaps to some extent the inability of India to take the dividends from these high growth periods and plow them back into that part of society and that part of the economy that hadn't done well. And I'm thinking of three things here as some things that we might have spent more time on and more resources on and more design effort, more effort at monitoring and evaluation of what was succeeding and what was not. And these three things are very obvious, they're apparent even today. One is education, and by that I mean K to 12 foundational education, where today we still lag behind many of our comparator countries. Secondly, public health, and this was obviously borne out very pointedly during the pandemic. And third, of course, jobs. Particularly, as I think the minister very rightly pointed out, the movement out of agriculture, when still about 50 to 60% of GDP is from agriculture, 15%, I'm reversing my numbers, 15 to 12% of GDP from agriculture, but more than 50% of our labor force still in agriculture. So that's a very poignant sign of what was not being done right and what we might have paid more attention to during this very important period when the reforms of 1991 liberalized what economists would call product markets, but were not able, because of the coalition politics that followed, to liberalize and to reform factor markets, particularly in labor, particularly in land, particularly in urban. And in a sense, we competed with the rest of the world and competed within India with our hands tied. And I think we could have done more in that era and would have seen even bigger dividends in the years that followed the reforms.
Is there something more to that? Is it just the inability to introduce the second generation reforms as the factor market reforms that you talked about? Or is it because if these 30 years, if you segment them in three broad divisions, the first 10 years was some kind of policies, the second 10 years was a little bit of entitlement politics, less of economic reforms, and the remaining 10 years was actually a slide back on reforms, particularly on the trade policy side. Is that a credible assessment? Is that
I think it's very credible. Certainly, the point you mentioned about trade policy, we are seeing a return back to a kind of industrial policy and a kind of protection that may or may not generate the competitive behavior of Indian industry and Indian workers that we absolutely will need to be able to face up to the competition from the outside. So I entirely agree with you that in some sense, the lessons of the early 90s and the early 2000s may not be fully absorbed in our thinking, while of course we laud ourselves in terms of some of the achievements we have made on production linked incentives, the kinds of schemes that we are coming up with, where there is clearly room for industrial policy. But the worry there is that we will not know where to stop. And there will be vested interests that will be built up. The politics of a large democracy demand that politicians not only know what to do, and when they do it, they may not know how to get re-elected after doing what they have done. So that's a bit of a problem in particularly a very large democracy of the kind where there are tremendous amounts of needs to be met across society. I'd also say that during this period we started seeing inequality amongst households, but most importantly, growing gaps between states. And in a sense, India became a mixed hodgepodge of having to deal with low-income problems or low-income traps and dealing with what many economists have called the middle-income trap, where you are not only worried about providing basic amenities like clean water, like transportation, like clean air, but you are concerned about innovation, you're concerned about competition at the margins, at the very margins of technology, etc. So we, in a sense, have got ourselves where we have states which, if they were independent countries, would be amongst the poorest countries of the world, and we have states which clearly are in the upper middle income category and have very different problems to deal with. So we are now in a situation where we have to deal with both at the same time, and that creates a complex problem for politicians, for average citizens like you and I and others, and obviously for society as a whole, and for the institutions of society that have to cater to these issues.
Great. Yamini, I think we have come at the right time, wherein how would you see these 30 years? In a sense that, if Shekhar's assessment is correct, which I agree it is correct, that what was possible in the first 10 years was not possible in the third 10 years. So what, from the political economy perspective, what changed in these 30 years that the country is at least dealing with economic policy options in a different way? What really changed in what way and how? How do you see this as a political economist?
So I think we have to take that question also and apply it to how markets have changed.
Sure.
Because the two have sort of gone together. If we think about what was the animating spirit of the 1991 imagination coming off the license Raj, I grew up as a teenager in the early 1990s in a family with three teenage girls. We hated each other because we had one landline. Thankfully, things opened up and mobile phones arrived, and now we're the best of friends and only squabble using WhatsApp. We all lived through what limitations the license Raj placed on the possibilities of individual freedoms, of choice, of empowerment, and we opened our eyes to what the future held out for us. And in that imagination, it was very much about state exit, because the state was seen as the source of all evil. Gurcharan Das's infamous quip of India grows at night when the state sleeps, I think it really captures that animating spirit of the 1990s, at least for cosmopolitan India. And I think that one of the challenges that we had is that in celebrating the exit of the state, we forgot that in fact the state needs to be in the right places, doing the right kinds of things, And that requires deep sets of investments. It requires the kind of investments actually that we made in the 1950s. So there's this wonderful new book by a historian called Nikhil Menon called Planning Democracy, which it goes into this really beautiful detail of how we built our statistical systems, how we built, and no matter what you feel about centralized planning, the kind of investment that we made in building these institutions, that's what gave us the fruits that we then built on to create this service-led and very sophisticated financial market when the opportunity arose in the 1990s. We stopped doing that. And I think we actually also stopped doing it with that much care for regulatory institutions that we built post the opening up in 1990. And the failure to build robust regulatory institutions in its nitty-gritty. What is the kind of skill sets that you need? Who are the people that you need to build here? How do you train them appropriately? How do you ensure that there is some political insulation in these regulatory institutions? We didn't do that, and that opened itself up to the obvious pressures of democracy. And the obvious pressures of democracy essentially got us to the twin balance sheet problem that eventually, I mean, there were, of course, the global financial crisis played a role, but the political economy of it, I think, had a lot to do with the failure to invest robustly in institutions and the allowing of democracy to sort of build itself in that way, absent these robust institutions. It also meant that I think for the masses of India, it disproved the ability for markets to be genuinely democratizing. And in this process also, we forgot that there are some markets where the state needs to exit, and there are some markets where the state needs to actually carefully build. One of those, I think, is in agriculture. We just had this very big discourse in India and movement around agricultural, around the farm laws. And while I strongly believe that the status quo is wrong and that we certainly need to get the state out of the way on many aspects of how we manage agriculture markets, the real economy operates in complex ways. What Odisha needs is very different to what Punjab needs, is very different to what Bihar needs. And in some places, we actually need very, very basic things like market infrastructure. Actually, the state needs to build that physical marketplace for trade to take place. And we never actually engaged with that. So the assumption that the sophisticated financial market and the service-led economy will eventually trickle down brought us to a place where we certainly lifted a large number of people out of abject poverty, but we were unable to do that middle. We failed to understand the shifts that markets were going through. One of those critical shifts links up to Shekhar's last comment about the inequalities within India. So the assumption always was that you would eventually see convergence, which happens. So you start with inequality, growth leads to inequality, eventually you get convergence, and India has disproved that. We disproved the world on democracy, we also disproved the world on how economies grow. We've seen only divergence, and it's very unlikely in the near future, near term, in the next 100 years, I think that we will see this convergence taking place, short of a miracle. So in all of this, how markets operate have also changed, and therefore the political economies of markets have changed, which means that we need a new frame of reference for how we think about factor market reform. There's no question that we need to reform factor markets in ways that actually genuinely build economies at the local level and enable all citizens to participate in market. But we don't have the analytical tools to do that because actually we fail to now understand how the political economy of local markets and the real economy work. One good example of this is something that all our policymakers perhaps knew intuitively but failed to take seriously, which was that in the peak growth years, the bulk of employment we created was in the informal construction sector, which are extremely precarious, which are contractor driven, and as a consequence of which agriculture and actually that 1 acre land is the only safety net for the bulk of Indian workers. Right. So the farm to non-farm link is actually deeply intertwined. How do you do land reform when that 1 acre land is the only kind of safety net that I have? And we saw this in COVID. So as all our workers went back home, they staved themselves of starvation, partly because of NREGA and PDS, but also because they had the ability to do basic subsistence farming. And that also if you look at our labor force data now, you can see that agriculture has been the primary generator of jobs. So suddenly we are now in a new puzzle where we're having a somewhat reversal of a very slow structural transformation. So these are the challenges that we need to build on going forward, which means that we need to understand the political economy of the real economy and get a better handle on how markets are genuinely working and where the state should be in, where the state capacity needs to be built, and where the state needs to exit and exit completely. This also links to the issue of human capital. So we completely, in a funny way, the big debate of the 1990s and 2000s, especially leading into the rights framework of the 2004 onward, 6 onward movement with NREGA and National Food Security Act eventually, and the right to education.
And information.
And information. It was about the trade-offs of growth versus investment in people, investment in in human productivity, human development. But one of the things to remember is, even though we never invested enough, this was also the phase where we did invest somewhat. So think about education. The universalization of education is a process that began in the late 1980s with adult literacy first and then slowly state innovation, but takes off in 2001 at the national government level with the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, which was all about building schools. And in some ways, that was a global zeitgeist as well. Build schools, get children into schools, bring in all the infrastructure and inputs. But as we massified education, we had already a rotting frontline state. Rotting because we never actually built it. If you go back to even in 1950s, Nehru's letters to chief ministers were all laments about the failure of the bureaucratic architecture that we inherited and continue and reformed in ways but continue to live with, of being able to respond to the genuine needs of the Indian people. And Prime Minister after Prime Minister, including Prime Minister Modi, have continued in this lament, but been singularly unable to actively actually build the capability of the state as people's aspirations have changed. So what did we do? We assumed, therefore, that our blind faith in markets, now I'm going to say blind faith in markets, will solve these problems. And so has the average Indian citizen. If you look pre-COVID at education data, more children in India are going to private schools than to, in rural India, it's at 40%, in urban India, it's at about 50%. My numbers might be a bit off, but within that ballpark. And most of the state doesn't believe in its ability to do this. But this has huge repercussions on the ability of that vulnerable population, that World Bank's 40% of India that got lifted out of poverty is still vulnerable, to save, to build, to have risk assurance, to be entrepreneurial, and to actually benefit in the market. So it's a sort of lack of faith in the capability of the state, inability of the state to build itself, that has got us to a place where we today spend the lowest of any comparable country on critical public services. And we now have got to a political economy where it's easier politically to say we'll do direct benefit transfers and cash transfers and actually build these core public goods. And that's really the challenge that we confront today. So we don't know how to solve the jobs problem, because that's really about making markets work at the grassroots. We don't quite know how to solve the state capability problem, because we hope that markets will solve it, and they haven't quite. Even going to private school, collectively, you'll still have a situation where 50% of children after finishing 5 years of schooling can barely read a standard 2 text. That's the education challenge. Quality of care is a true health challenge. And these require deep investments in the state. It requires democracy to work. So while we've all praised the Indian states, the India's story of democracy, we should also be aware that that story of democracy is precarious, and it needs to be built up and nurtured much more carefully from the grassroots. So our grassroots institutions of democracy, along with now elite institutions of democracy, need more protection from us as a citizenry. And I think that's where hopefully we'll be able to get to this, the holy grail of building the capacity of the state. So the animating spirit of the next 25 years has to be not necessarily strong state, because that has different connotations, but capable state, delivering state, and accountable state.
Fantastic. I think we have answered what was going to be my final round question to you. Would you like to add to that point? Because I was going to come to the final round, asking each of the panelists, what do they think is going to be one single step that needed to be taken in the next 25 years to make the political economy work better in your case?
So investing in the state, as I said, but let me add 2 more layers to that.
Yeah.
Layer 1 is that much of our discussion on the Indian state and our lament is restricted to the Indian Administrative Service and the Lal Batti Gari. And while that's most certainly part of the challenge, and we keep hoping that lateral entry will solve it, which I'm not convinced about, the real experience of the state for most Indians is the state cadres, the grassroots state. That's where we need to invest in people, we need to invest in their skills, we need to invest in their training. These are parts of the state which we have forgotten. As the state began to retreat after 1991, and when fiscal rules came in, we started worrying about fiscal deficits, perhaps rightly so. Wages and liabilities were great concerns for state governments. So what have we done? We have contractualized the frontline state. Economists will argue that a contractual contract may ensure you get accountability because you can hire and fire. The truth is that the political economy of the grassroots state does not allow you to do that. You in fact end up with strikes, unionization, court cases that then put a hold on actual hiring. So moving away from this contractualization of the state to genuinely empowering the state with workers, with skills, with capacity, that means we should treat state training institutions like we treat Labasna, with the holy grail of where public administration is taught and trained. And the second most important thing is that we third most important thing is that we mustn't let go of democracy. Our grassroots political institutions are the weakest. India is one of the, think about this, between China and the USA, the United States of America, 5 times more public expenditure takes place at the local government level than India. So we have a very centralized state structure. Our political economy is moving. Now we've become one tier, Delhi, whereas it should be Delhi, states, and most important, municipalities and panchayats. We need to reverse that. And that's how the health of our democracy will be saved too.
Shekhar, I'll come to you. One specific thing, idea that you have, which is needed to take us to the next stage as the Indian economy is supposed to grow.
We are in very uncharted waters in terms of the global economy. I think there's been a fundamental change in the trading system, in the access and the kind of rule-bound trading system that countries enjoyed in the 90s and 2000s. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has thrown up a whole host of new possibilities and new challenges that we simply couldn't imagine, where financial transactions have been weaponized in a way in which we had never imagined them to be. So we are in a very uncertain world. In that uncertain world, it is very important to be able to manage our fundamentals. And if I were to take a very short-term view of the next year or two, the kind of problems that we will possibly see with the twin deficits of our external deficit as well as our fiscal deficit, and they obviously are closely linked, they will need very sharp understanding, knowledge, experience of handling complex issues. I believe that we are underestimating the dangers from that set of events in the global economy, and we are now fully integrated into that economy.
Okay.
We obviously need to protect what we have. At the same time, we need to make sure that we don't lose the kinds of opportunities that new changes will bring about.
The governance structure, fiscal management.
And external management.
External economic management, yeah. Okay,
so let me take the liberty of pointing out two, actually.
Go ahead, please.
So one is economic, the other is politics.
Okay.
And I'll not talk about, poverty and all that stuff.
No, I was thinking that what should India Inc. do?
Yeah. So one, I think whatever we do for the growth of this economy, we need investment. A lot of capex has to take place, and that is when the GDP increases, the incomes increase, and hopefully they proliferate deep into the country. For that, I think what this country very badly needs today is deep debt markets. I think we have a big missing feature in our capital markets. Equity markets are fine. Debt markets really need to become very strong. The corporate bonds which are issued, the G-Secs which are issued, they're all listed, but not traded on stock exchanges. I think the participation of public at large in a transparent manner in debt, and I'm sure Andrew would have a view on that as well, that is an absolute must if this economy has to grow. The second part, which I think is more important than the first, is political. And I'll take you back to the time when I had just got into business. At that time, what we were taught was that when you enter into a contract with the government, don't read it. Don't worry about reading it. Sign on the dotted line whatever they have written. And the belief was very simple, that the government and the courts of this country will always be benevolent. Therefore, after signing that agreement, if you come to a situation and say, oh, by the way, this clause was very unfair, they would always say, don't worry, we'll take care. That is one piece, unfortunately, this country has completely lost. Today, the fear factor is such that the worst contracts to be feared are with the government. Because if it prescribes a penalty of, say, 100,000 rupees a day maximum, and there is a minor technical non-compliance, nobody today has the guts to say, I will not charge you 100,000. And that fear factor, I think, will
Because that person himself will go to jail then.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
This fear has got to go. If it doesn't, all the talk of ease of doing business. And unfortunately, it's also the situation with the courts today. The judiciary is also into the same trap. And I think this is one thing which has to change. We have to get back that confidence that government and the judiciary are benevolent. They will take a kind view and always segregate between genuine mistakes, non-compliances, minor defaults, minor delays, and mens rea. They can't be put into the same basket. That fear factor, and I think all of us are aware what is happening to the bureaucrats today. Who has the guts to take a decision where after 10 years of his retirement, somebody could come back and say, oh, this action caused that, what do they say? Loss to the exchequer, right? If that persists, we are in trouble.
Okay. Andrew, final word from you on what needs to be fixed to get the markets better, perform better.
I'm not sure what needs to be fixed, but let me try and answer it slightly differently. I mean, maybe it's coincidence of this forum and the 75 years and the fact that India overtook the UK in terms of GDP. Of course, I knew that. That's why I came here 25 years ago. But if you look through Twitter on that day, there were so many negative comments about it. People arguing about per capita GDP versus this versus that. We should celebrate sometimes as a country that we are moving ahead. And it's very simple how I think in terms of the next, whether it's 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. I know two things. I know that in the US, they have, I don't know, 68, 70 million millennials, Gen Z. China has 400 million. India has 430 million. I know where the growth is going to be. I don't have to think about this. I really don't. So, if we can grab, everyone says China plus one. Why is it not India plus one? We've got the same kind of population, the same kind of opportunity. And I just think if the government, which I know Prime Minister Modi's, put India on the top table, and rightly so. If we can grasp that opportunity, and which I can see that the government's trying to do, and if they open the bond market, it opens up a lot more kind of money, available money to come into India to invest. That's the opportunity. So I don't know if you need to fix it. I just think you need to grasp it. And if you can do that, then all the figures that we see about India being in the top 3 in the next 10 years in terms of GDP, it could easily happen, and I think it will.
Okay, fantastic. That's very hopeful note. I have run out of time. I had hoped that I will complete the discussion in 45 minutes and keep 10 minutes for any questions from the floor. But I'm already crossed one hour, and Shailesh is looking at me very angrily. So can we have a couple of questions? If you have any questions, please feel free. Yeah. Go ahead. there a possibility of meritocracy at 100? Currently, we are talking about India at 75. Is there a we are talking about deepening democracy. Is meritocracy the solution? And is there a way to achieve it?
If we invest in our education systems from the bottom up, absolutely.
It's a big if, but...
It's an if.
Yeah.
It's a massive if.
The fact is, meritocracy is already there. How would you have so many startups if there is no meritocracy? There is meritocracy in the country, and it will only strengthen as we go forward.
But the historical discrimination does not allow for, I mean, the challenge with India is intergenerational mobility is so low. So how do you build meritocracy in that context? And that's where investing in people, I think,
So
alongside with democracy.
We are talking of building merit. If you can build merit, meritocracy will happen. But problem is building that merit.
Yeah.
This is not a question, rather apprehensions. What steps are required to repose the confidence among the retail investors post LIC fiasco? Because a lot of hype was created and even the banks were open to accept the application, which hitherto never happened in past. And see the result. People also believe in the success story of Maruti, which came in IPO 20 years back at rupees 125 only and now hovering at around 9,000 rupees. So a lot of disinvestment is there. So something should be done to repose the confidence among the small investors.
Your question. Andrew, I think this question, your name is written on this question. You answer.
So what's the question exactly?
The question is, what needs to be done to revive confidence in the markets, which have been badly shattered after the LIC fiasco? I don't know whether it was, am I right? Am I
Yes, LIC fiasco.
Right. I'm not sure I'd call it a fiasco, but it's all about valuations, right? And I think, we all got, perhaps a little bit too close to a company which we all know and people hold policies. So there's that kind of loyalty towards, we must have this as part of my portfolio. And, it hasn't worked. It will work in the future. I don't think, we need to it's all about how that was valued at that point. And I think there was enough warning signals, there was enough written about it in terms of to try and dampen down expectations. But of course, I think emotional aspects got in the way. And I can name many companies that have listed that's happened to, not just in India, but in other countries as well. So I think the faith is, you should keep the faith in the company. It will do well.
And one more thing.
No, I think let's sort of, you have another question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Small question only. Yes, very brief. Indian stock market has been best performing in last few months. And are we immune to what is happening in the worldwide?
Okay.
I've been talking about that in the last few days because all of a sudden a new narrative has come out. India's decoupling. India's decoupled from the world. And, the last time I remember this was 2007. And we know what happened in 2008. So we can't be decoupled from what's happening globally. If there's a crash of markets for whatever reason globally, money will be taken out. Risk gets taken off the table. Money will come out of India. Now, would we fall as much as other markets? Maybe not. So relatively, we're going to be okay. Have we decoupled? No.
Good. I think this brings us to the end of this discussion. I must, it's customary to say that it is a rich discussion, but to be honest, this was probably one of the richest discussions that I've taken part in on this very, very difficult subject to cover in about an hour's time. And I don't want to sum it up, but one takeaway which I have is that when we had the first part of the discussion, there was unanimity of views almost. The second part, there was still some unanimity and people were hopeful. But in the third part of the discussion, I saw a lot of differences of opinion emerging. And I think that sums up the way the direction in which we are moving, whether it is the markets or the governance or the economy. So with these words, I will bring this discussion to an end. Thank you to my panelists.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I will ask you to come to take charge of.
Thank you so much for that wonderful discussion. And there was a lot of ground covered in 1 hour, and you also turned the spotlight on the ground that needs to be covered as a country, and also things that to be mindful of and the opportunities to grasp. So thank you very much. I would now like to invite Ms. Sangeeta Khera, Vice President Business Standard. Mr. Sachin Fansikar, Chief Operating Officer. Mr. Amitava Sinha, Vice President HR. And Mr. Suveen Sinha, Chief Editor, Business Standard. I would request Sangeeta to come back on stage, please, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good evening, all of you. I think we had a long, interesting sessions. It's my privilege to thank Honorable Minister Shri Nitin Gadkari, Minister for Road, Transport and Highway, Government of India, and one of our eminent speakers, Ms. Yamini Iyer, President, Chief Executive, CPR, Mr. Andrew Holland, CEO, Avendus Capital Alternate Strategies, Mr. Shekhar Shah, Vice President, ISPP Academic Advisory Council, who have graced the event and added intellectual value to our event, 75 Platinum Perspectives, India at 75, Past, Present and Future. Sorry, Mr. Akhil Gupta, Vice Chairman, Bharti Enterprise. Sorry. I take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, without whom this event would not have been possible. This event is powered by MMRDA, which is Mumbai Metropolitan Region Development Authority, associate sponsor Cantabile, co-sponsor BPTB, and our webcast partner 24 Frames. I also thank our wonderful audience for their presence and hope they have made best out of it. And to conclude, I request all of you to join us for dinner and cocktails. Thank you. Thank you all of you.